The arrival of Luke Skywalker in the final episode of Season 2 of The Mandalorian was one of the most pivotal moments, not only for this show, but in the history of Star Wars. But Luke's cameo, which resulted in the Jedi Master taking Grogu with him to complete his training, has led many fans to speculate about what the child's fate may be, with many saying that Grogu's decision to go with Luke Skywalker now means that he will die at the hands of Ben Solo. But rest assured, I am here to explain to you all in this video why Grogu being killed by Ben Solo is actually extremely unlikely. The most important thing to understand here is what actually happened on the night Ben Solo turned to the dark side. The idea that Grogu will be killed by Ben is predicated on the belief that, as Luke says in The Last Jedi, Ben Solo destroyed Luke's training temple and slaughtered his students. This, however, was not the case. It's well documented in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic that Ben Solo actually had nothing to do with the destruction of Luke's Jedi temple. When Ben emerges from the rubble of his sleeping quarters, the temple is already on fire, set ablaze by the voice he had heard in his head throughout his childhood, which is later revealed to be Emperor Palpatine. The dead students who Luke finds in and around the temple after Ben Solo flees the planet were killed by this explosion, not by Ben. Ben does everything he can, in fact, to avoid harming his Jedi friends, even as they continue to chase him into the unknown. None of this was his fault at all, actually, although he does claim he was the one responsible for the temple's destruction in an attempt to play the bad guy after he believes Luke is dead. It's also worth noting that Grogu does not appear in any section of this comic, which covers many details regarding Luke's training academy and the build-up to Ben Solo's fall to the dark side. It's not made explicitly clear that Grogu wasn't one of the Jedi students at this time, but his presence is also not confirmed or even so much as alluded to, which seems a bit weird if he was indeed there. Sure, he could have been intentionally left out as a means not to spoil the events of The Mandalorian, but again, I find this to be very unlikely. And regardless of whether Grogu was there or not, he would not have been killed by Ben Solo, but rather by Emperor Palpatine. However, it makes far more sense and would be a far better storytelling decision in my opinion to make it so that Grogu was not there at all. Let's think about this for a second. We know now that Grogu did not die at the hands of Ben Solo, at least not at the Jedi Temple, and it would be very out of character for a young Ben Solo to kill Grogu even at some other time after his turn to the dark side. And there is almost no chance in my eyes that Disney would choose to have Grogu in the temple and make him just another victim of Palpatine's attack. So with all of that in mind, where could Grogu be? What could have happened in the time before the rise of Kylo Ren that would allow for the child to be long gone? The reality is that there is no definitive answer to this question because the possibilities are pretty much endless. Nearly 20 years pass from the time Luke takes Grogu to train him and the time Ben Solo turns to the dark side, so the truth really is that Grogu could be a fully trained Jedi Master at that point. And that does sound a bit odd at first, I know, given Grogu's extremely small stature and the way his species appears to age. That does come across as a bit of a weird idea, but it's also worth mentioning that Yoda became a Jedi Master at 100, indicating that Grogu, who is 50 years old in The Mandalorian, will undergo an accelerated growth rate in his second half century of life. We also have to keep in mind that Grogu has already received some level of proper Jedi training before he ever leaves with Luke. In fact, he was being trained at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant before Luke Skywalker was even born. Granted, he clearly still has a long way to go before he reaches the level of a Jedi Master or even a Jedi Knight, but it is not out of the realm of possibility or inconceivable at all that he could reach that point before the collapse of Luke's Jedi Order. And if that were the case, Grogu could have left the training academy to begin his own Jedi Order, or even to become another Ahsoka Tano-like character who wields the Force at an extremely high level and even uses his own lightsaber, but no longer claims the title of a Jedi. Maybe he even meets back up with Ahsoka and they form their own team, perhaps alongside Ezra and Sabine as well. Maybe that's Grogu's next big play, his next adventure. What if Grogu was pulled from The Mandalorian after the show had established itself so that he can now help bring attention to the upcoming Ahsoka series? Maybe Grogu will not be trained by Luke for very long at all, and instead, Luke will hand him back over to Ahsoka, agreeing with her assertion that Grogu has too much fear and anger to be trained as a Jedi, but also believing that she can guide him in a way that he cannot. That would not only allow the child to survive for generations to come, but it would also make way for a potential meetup between Ahsoka Tano and Luke Skywalker, which is something I would really like to see at some point, no matter how brief their encounter may be. And then finally, there is also the strong possibility, in my opinion, that Grogu will return to Din Djarin at some point and they will go back to business as usual. I could even imagine a scenario where after Din Djarin and Bo-Katan have united the two sides of Mandalore, if they do so of course, Grogu returns and eventually becomes the Mandalorian ruler, claiming the Darksaber as his own weapon. The saber would need some modifications, of course, to better suit Grogu's tiny stature even after he's reached maturity, but that is definitely a workable situation and I would definitely be here for it. We could even end up in this time long after the sequel trilogy, where Grogu serves as the new Mandalorian Jedi, watching over their people and maybe even having some run-ins with Ahsoka or even Rey. Again, the possibilities really are endless here, and they can do whatever they want with Grogu under these current circumstances, so we're really just gonna have to wait and see where they go with this story. But the big point here is that the likelihood of Ben Solo being the one to kill Grogu is actually close to none, and if he were to do so, it would most likely need to be sometime after the destruction of Luke's Jedi Temple in order to maintain continuity, which again, I still find to be very unlikely given what we know about the character of Ben Solo, based both on this particular comic and based on his behavior in the sequel trilogy, where he is made to be more of a victim of a bad situation than he is a power-hungry destroyer. And assuming that all holds true as it should, the potential for Grogu to show up again with or without Din Djarin remains strong. But with that being said, I am going to wrap this video up here, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day wherever you may be. Please remember to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and may the Force be with you always.